So this was Conway's game of life, but on a 3D spherical planet. So notice as generations, it has asteroid impacts. I did ask for asteroid impacts. It did decide to add it in there. Tons of options, including various bloom strength, bloom radius, threshold, exposure, tons of stuff. We have the speed at which it's running. We can change kind of the resolution. Wow, that's kind of nuts. And there's tons of more 3D options to kind of rotate the Earth in various ways. We have meteor intervals, meteor seeds, etc., etc. Tons of controls. We're able to pause and unpause the simulation to look closer to it. You can go a step at a time. And here's if I start shooting, this is kind of what that looks like. So as you can see here, it's actually like bouncing off the building, the whatever this is, a machine gun, minigun. Things are actually bouncing off the building when I'm shooting it and it's blowing up. It's looking good.
Thanks to Framer for powering this video. More on them later.
OpenAI just released a GPT 5.2. Now, it really sounded like a lot of people thought it would be just a small incremental step forward, but that's not what GPT 5.2 is. You feel it right off the bat. Let me show you what I mean. So here's one of the first prompts I gave it. Notice that right now it's actually still running. I did an iteration, so it's running, doing that right now in the background. It's been running for about 10 minutes. So notice it's 5.2 Pro, and notice how long it thought about this prompt, 55 minutes and 13 seconds. I asked it to create a 3D city destruction game. You float around, there's buildings, you shoot, they blow up, you get a high score, whatever. It goes off for an hour to put everything together. By the way, for other similar tests that I've been running, it doesn't just return code in that code box. It returns a zip file, right? You download the zip file, you unzip it, and it has, the project folder, and it has all the project files you need to execute. It's got a little template for how to run it. This no longer feels like a prompt and answer. This feels like handing off a project. That's not the weird part. Are you ready for the weird part? Look at this. So this is Pro enabled, right? But if you click here, look at that. This isn't even its final form. There's an extended thinking time available. Now, if you're wondering if it built that game, yes, it one-shot that game with destructible environments, multiple weapon sets, the ability to fly around a city, blow stuff up, high score, has sound, lighting. It took an hour to produce the entire game on the standard setting, not the extended setting. I just realized that's even in there. I'm kind of scared to touch it. Maybe when I go to sleep, I'll run an extended thing, go to sleep, and see what it comes up with in the morning. And this new heft, it comes through in one benchmark in particular. And as you'll see, a lot of very respected people in the AI space are pointing this out. We'll come back to the thing that it took an hour to do, but this is related. This is a different way of looking at the same thing that I'm telling you. So here's Ethan Mollick. He's saying, whoa, this new GDP-Val score is a very big deal. He's not really prone to hyperbole. Here's Noam Brown. So he's a researcher at OpenAI, ex-Meta, did tons of amazing work in the space. He's saying, in my opinion, GDP-Val is the most important result from this GPT 5.2 launch. Now, we covered GDP-Val on a previous video back in September 25th when it came out. If you missed the one, you might be wondering, what is this GDP-Val? Why is everybody saying that it's the most important thing ever? The reason why it's so important is because it's a benchmark that is measuring the performance of our models on real-world tasks. And by the way, as you'll notice, it's not just their models. And I got to give a lot of credit to OpenAI for this, as you'll see in just a second. Quick note to all the founders and builders. Watch me ship a real production-ready site in minutes with Framer. No developer needed. Framer is a no-code builder made for businesses. Think Figma-style canvas, but it publishes a real website. Exactly what you design is what goes live. It's trusted by fast-growing teams and it's built for speed. You get the essentials: CMS, aka Content Management System, to run blogs and pages, A/B testing, comparing two versions to see which one wins, localization, that translates everything for new markets, plus live collaboration so the entire team edits together. Let me show you how. Idea to live. Let's open up a blank project and use Wireframer to help us whip up something fast. I have this billion-dollar startup idea. We combine two things that the internet just can't get enough of: AI news and pictures of cats. So we prompt Wireframer, create a landing page for a newsletter sign up about getting daily AI news, plus a daily cutest cat picture. Notice this kills dev handoff, meaning that marketing can ship the sites themselves. It's enterprise ready too. Staging environments, role-based access control, you choose who can edit or publish, automatic SSL encryption, DDoS protection, and strong SEO and analytics out of the box. The result? Launch full sites or campaign pages in minutes instead of weeks. Your engineers focus on product. Your growth team owns the website. Or if you're a one-person team, this allows you to do it all at ludicrous speed. Boom, I'm done with my super slick landing page. I expect us to have a 100% opt-in rate. Now you're up. Ready to build a site that looks hand-coded without hiring a developer? Try Framer free using the link below and use the code Wes Roth for a free month of Framer Pro. And now let's get back to the content. So I have to warn you, the people we're going to look at is white to background. So it's definitely going to be a flashbang effect as we switch to that from this dark mode. But what it looks like is various occupations, various projects that those people might do across different sectors, backgrounds, occupations, from software developers and lawyers to registered nurses and mechanical engineers, switching to light mode, flashbang. And here are some examples of these tasks. So basically, when we're trying to understand how well these models are able to do real world economically valuable tasks, obviously benchmarks, they kind of give us an idea, but they don't really translate into being able to do work. I'm sure there are kids out there that can ace all sorts of tests, but then put in a real environment and told to actually get something done will be completely useless and vice versa. And we can think of jobs as basically kind of this hierarchy where at the bottom is kind of individual skills like being able to use Excel to make a chart or being able to use Photoshop to combine several images and text on some specific format. And all those skills should hopefully sort of combine so that the person can finish projects. And then at the top is kind of like the job, which is, being able to finish all those projects, plus a whole bunch of other miscellaneous stuff. So we've seen these AI models kind of do those individual skills. Yes, they can design an image. Yes, they can craft an email. Yes, they can write this or do that. This is moving one level higher and saying, can they actually complete entire projects? And not completely brain dead projects either. For example, here it's a manufacturing engineer. So in that sort of sector or profession, you're supposed to design a 3D model of a cable reel stand for assembly line. So I'm assuming some sort of a AutoCAD thing. It's a little bit hard to tell, but they do have the descriptions down below. But the final sort of a deliverable is this. It's the actual model, the overall design with exploded view of components, right? So, and you can't just hallucinate everything. It has to be real. And part of this benchmark is verifying that it's real. We'll get to that in just a second. Another example is a financial and investment analyst, for example, might be asked to create a competitor landscape for last mile delivery. Or a registered nurse might be asked to assess skin lesion images and create consultation report. You've probably had some experience like this where you went to the doctor or wherever, they took a look at whatever was troubling you, they kind of thought about it, they connected the dots and they gave you like, I think it's this. This is kind of similar. They're going based on images and an experienced human would deliver this. Again, we'll get to how they're graded in just a second, but there's tons of projects like this. And as you can see, they're not brain dead simple. They're not necessarily rocket science, but they're also not entry-level projects. These need an experienced professional in that field to complete. Create an intro reel with video and audio, dealing with a dissatisfied customer, create a week-long luxury Bahamas itinerary for a family of 4, optimize table layout for spring vendor fair, design a sales brochure for new property. I mean, all these, you can imagine people doing this right now. There's people right now creating sales brochures for all sorts of stuff. It has to contain images and text, and it has to be right. It has to have certain specifications. It can't be wrong. Another example is audit something with Excel. So being able to audit the data, make sure it's correct, there's no discrepancies, etc. And how the benchmark works is that both humans and LLMs try to complete those projects. And then this benchmark, they hire experts, right, in that field. They're industry professionals, right? They have to have a minimum of 4 years of professional experience in their occupation with a strong resume and with a demonstrated history of professional recognition, promotion, and management responsibilities. That's just the minimum. The average expert that they had, checking these projects had 14 years of experience. They have to pass a video interview, background check, training, quiz, blah, blah, blah. The point is, they had the judges, the human judges that they had here, they were real legit people that knew how to grade these projects, how to rate them. These are people that worked at, Bank of America, BBC News, Boeing, Budget Rent-A-Car, Capital One, Centers for Disease and Prevention, Citigroup, Condé Nast, CVS Pharmacy, U.S. Department of Defense, E-Trade, FTC, Google, Goldman Sachs, HBO, IBM, Johnson & Johnson. I'm done. You get it. These are legit, respectable companies, right? And Wells Fargo is also on the list. And so these industry experts with all their experience working for these companies, 14 years on average of working experience, they grade both the projects that were completed by AI, by large language models, as well as projects that were completed by industry experts. They graded them blind, so they didn't know if they were looking at AI outputs or industry expert outputs, human outputs. And here were the results. So basically the top of this chart is wins and ties. The darker blue is wins only, right? So basically this top model either won or tied with human industry experts 47.6% of the time. The reason that I want to give props to OpenAI is it wasn't their model. It was Claude Opus 4.1. Their model, their best model at the time, GPT-5 High, came in at 38.8. So the headline is that these models did not achieve parity with industry experts, with humans. They're approaching it, but they're not there. Keep in mind, this is September 25th. But as we see over time, from June 2024 till now, right, that curve is heading up. It's getting closer and closer and closer. And in the previous video, I said, pay attention to this, right? Because at some point, it's going to cross, it's going to get better, and it's going to get much better fast. Once it starts crossing that line and getting better, things will start changing. I think that's fairly self-evident. Imagine you have two remote employees, you give them projects, right? And over time, you find that employee A consistently just outperforms employee B. Whatever project you give them, they come back with better answers, better graphics, better whatever it is that you're trying to do. Assuming you're paying them the same rate, you're probably going to give more projects to that employee because they just produce better results. You might even consider, letting go of the underperforming employee. What if you later find out that that employee that kept doing a better job is actually a large language model and can do that job for a fraction of what the other person did it for? The incentive is even more skewed. Now imagine if this happens across most jobs in most industries. Okay, so a few months ago, the best OpenAI model did, let's call it 39%. They either won or tied with humans only 39% of the time. The best model available, Claude Opus 4.1, call it 48%, right? It won or tied 48% of the time. So close, but no cigar. But, instead of cigar, catastrophic job loss. Okay, so remember those numbers. Here's the new and updated GDP-Val. GDP 5.2 Pro clocks in at 74%. So it was at 39% a few months ago, and now it's at 74%. So it's not as good as humans to just way better most of the time, or more precisely, I should probably say. So it won over human experts in the field, right? 60% of the time. So 60% of the time, the results were better. Those industry professionals with 14 years experience, they looked at it, and 60% of the time, they're like, this work is better. That work happened to be AI. And then 74% of the time, it either won or tied. There's no difference. So that's a GPT 5.2 Pro. Again, that's that model that hammered away at, my little silly prompt for it to create a little shoot 'em up game. It reasoned for 55 minutes, for almost an hour. And again, standard, not extended thinking mode. So I hope it makes sense why a lot of these people are saying that this is a very important metric to pay attention to, right? So Noam Brown of OpenAI saying this is the most important result. And I'm sure some people will be like, yeah, but he works for OpenAI, right? Ethan Mollick doesn't work for OpenAI, independent third party, saying it's a very big deal. So let's quickly look through the actual benchmarks. What do we achieve? So at the top, the most important one is a GDP-Val. GDP, of course, is a metric to track the entire gross domestic productivity of a nation, total economic activity, total output, consumptions, investments, government spending, and net exports. It's not necessarily the best metric to track productivity across the board, but it's a pretty good one for a lot of use cases. I mean, if you think about it, if a lot of diseases are solved, for example, GDP would actually take a hit, right? There'll be less money spent on treating disease. So there are certain situations where maybe that's not the best metric, but in terms of just output, producing stuff, GDP is a good metric. And when AI is worse than humans at producing economically valuable work, it's likely that, there's a small fraction of a nation's GDP that is sort of produced by AI. And I just mean the actual, like the output, the projects, the work completed by AI. But once it gets better than the average human expert, well, we're kind of into this unknown territory. I mean, if you think about the fact that, within the first hour of GPT 5.2 going live, I barraged it with tons of prompts like this. Here's almost an hour. Here's about half an hour of reasoning, 20 minutes, about half an hour. Here's 20 minutes, you get it. Those were, by the way, just the first prompts. Some of those had iterations. But if I wanted to get that much sort of work done without ChatGPT, that would probably translate to hours of work by a software engineer. So would this reduce demand for engineers? Probably not in that field. I think the need for good, high quality code is pretty elastic, right? We might produce a lot more code if we can produce high quality code cheaply, but there are probably a lot of industries where demand for human labor will take a hit. That demand will be destroyed. And if this metric GDPval is to be believed, and hopefully I showed you why it seems like a pretty good metric. It seems like they were able to establish how to track those results, I feel like, fairly intelligently. It's kind of hard to dismiss it as nonsense. They're paying people with a lot of experience, with managerial experience, to decide which one is better. Those are the people that will be deciding which projects and which workers will be working on those projects at real jobs at those companies. And in the last few months, we went from where humans were in general better than large language models to now humans are in general worse. There was also an improvement in SWE-Bench Pro, an improvement in SWE-Bench Verified, a pretty good leap here in GPT-QA Diamond. And I feel like as these metrics get saturated, it's kind of hard to tell, right? Because you're just like inching up, a few percentage points as you're getting to 100%. But these are, pretty good leaps across the board. AME 2025 no tools went from 94% to 100. So interesting results with frontier math. The other big thing that stands out is ARC-AGI 1 and ARC-AGI 2. So they are verified. So they're verified by the ARC-AGI people to say, yep, this is correct. But again, a lot of these benchmarks, I mean, tons of respect for ARC-AGI. Frontier math is interesting. AIME, I mean, they're good benchmarks, but I feel like more and more people are just not as excited about these models creeping up those benchmarks. We are a lot more interested in how it translates into real life effectiveness. By the way, shout out to AI safety memes and Rob Wiblin. We see a lot of this commentary from, I don't know who it is, economists, also probably some lay people. They're somehow completely convinced that all of this AI stuff is going to disappear any second now. Just around a corner, poof, and it's gone, right? The AI bubble pops and all these models cease to exist. Progress not just stops, but as they say here, right, somewhere after this like exponential curve of models ability, like as it starts to really get going, what the next obvious thing that's going to happen is, if we just projected a few years forward, well, immediate, inexplicable, permanent decline to all the, AI capabilities. This curve, maybe it continues on its exponential. Maybe it starts flattening out with more of an S-curve. We're not quite sure yet. The future will tell, but we can pretty safely bet on the fact that this is not happening. As OpenAI was testing these models on the GDP-Eval, one judge commented, "It is an exciting and noticeable leap in output quality. It appears to have been done by a professional company with staff and has a surprisingly well-designed layout and advice for both deliverables, though with one, we still have some minor errors to correct." Here's the example from GPT 5.1 to GPT 5.2. Notice the leap. Here's a cap table 5.1 to 5.2. So a lot of highlights in red that were incorrect. Here, everything is correct. 5.2 completed all calculations correctly and in an auditable way. So it's doing it in a way that can be audited later, and it can also probably be really good at doing the audit. And here's the jump from GPT-5 to GPT 5.2 in terms of project management. The other, I think, important thing to understand here is kind of these intelligence curves, as they're called. So we're beginning to see more and more companies kind of like draw these curves out. So on the y-axis, so up and down, we have the thing that we're trying to measure, like how good is it at the thing. And then on the x-axis, as we go further to the right, we're letting it burn through more and more tokens. We're spending more money to let it think at length about the prompt. So a good way of thinking about it is like intelligence kind of per dollar. The more you're willing to pay for the model, for its work, for how many tokens it uses, the better it is, the more intelligent it is at doing that job. And each company, whether that's Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, XAI, they all have kind of a few models along here across that intelligence curve. So you'll be able to kind of like pick one depending on what you need. And each time they release a new family of models, you can think of that as kind of like moving that intelligent curve that way, right? So here, this might be pro, and this might be thinking, and this might be mini or whatever. This one is like the standard one. Sometimes the names get changed around. I guess this is instant. Google, Gemini, they have their flash models, they have their pro models, etc. For Anthropic, of course, it's Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku. So I'm kind of combining the thinking budget and the size of the models kind of into one chart. I hope that makes sense, but it's just a way to think about it. So this in general represents the smarter it is, the more money you expect to pay. Each model can draw kind of this line, this curve line, and then put out a few models along that curve. So I mainly look at like the best of the best. So like the pro model, thinking mode, whatever, that's the one that had that big leap on GDP-Eval. But of course, there's tons of use cases where you don't need the best of the best. You need something cheaper, right? Use cases where you just need lots of volume. The important thing about this is it also reduces the cost quite a bit. There's a lot of algorithmic and non-algorithmic improvements that drop the cost of doing certain things. Here's Sam Altman. As this model gets released, he's saying a 390x cost reduction in 1 year, right? So we're talking about almost 400x cheaper, right? That's kind of insane. Where else, what other industry do you see prices for doing something dropping that much? Is it 400 times cheaper to build houses year to year, or to get healthcare, or anything? No, we don't really see that. Even with digital stuff, with software, seeing a reduction of 400x in 1 year is still insane. You don't really see that. It's uncommon. By the way, help me settle a bet. When somebody says not uncommon, when somebody says something is not uncommon, does that mean it's common? Does not uncommon equal common? Does that mean the same thing? Is it like math where like these things cancel out and then common equals common? Or is there some other logic that completely eludes me? But Sam Altman is referring to this chart. So as you can see, GPT 5.2 Pro X high, so extra high, is like, what is that, 91%. So I'm guessing this is that mythical mode that I showed you where this GPT 5.2 Pro high, that's where things for now, or we can also kick it up a notch into extended. Maybe that's X high, I'm wondering, but it gets over 90% as far as I can tell on the ARC-AGI. So that's also kind of an important thing to understand as it's zooming past us in the ability to complete certain economically valuable tasks. We are also seeing at the same time a pretty big reduction in cost over time. So 1 year ago, OpenAI O3 high, right? So it scored 88% on this evaluation, but it cost quite a lot of money, $4,500 per task. A few days ago, there was this take, Catherine Everett. She's saying people don't know how ChatGPT works. It doesn't know things. It autocompletes sentences. It makes things up. And she was quote tweeting this person, Charles C. Mann, just visited the nearby university library and was fascinated to learn the students are bombarding it with requests for references that do not exist. The product of ChatGPT and its ilk. It's a goddamn nuisance, the librarian said. They don't believe it's all made up. So if you've been watching this channel for a while, you probably know that I've been for a while now talking about like kind of, getting ready for the things that are coming. I always said that while I'm very optimistic about where things are going in the long term, in the kind of the short to medium term, things might get ugly, things might get bumpy. We did an interview with Emad Mustak not that long ago. He is a great person to listen to about these things and kind of like a prediction for what's coming. He's one of those very like multifaceted people that seems to know a lot of things across disciplines. I think he was ex-hedge fund. He also started Stability AI, and now he's working on kind of like this next thing, which is kind of the economic impact of AI. So when we asked him, what do all the people that are like the billionaires that he knows, that he hangs out with, that are kind of following the stuff, what are they thinking? What are they preparing for? Like, what do they expect from the future? They are also preparing and talking about it and thinking about it. They're worried about kind of like how the transition is going to happen. And then he also walks us through a calculation of how incredibly cheap it's going to be to replace human labor. Like he actually walks you through kind of like the economic step-by-step breakdown of exactly what's going to happen. You kind of realize that things are going to change in a big way, and we don't really have some solution to it quite yet. A lot of people are thinking about it, working on it. There's not like one plan that's like, oh, here's what we do, when all human labor goes to zero. Sam Altman has a plan. We've covered that on this channel. Imam Mastak is talking about it. Tons of other people are talking about it. But the point about this post is it does feel like on one side we have a lot of people that are following AI that are like, man, big things are coming. And there's also kind of this other side that's skeptical and are saying nothing will change these large language models. They don't know anything. They make things up. By the way, I think it's fair to say that every single thing that she says here is it technically accurate. People don't know how ChatGPT works. Very true. Right? It doesn't know things. It complete sentences. Very true. It makes things up. Also, you can kind of say it's true again, depending on how we define these terms. What I think people fail to realize is just how similar our neural networks up here in our brains are to these digital neural networks. So people keep saying that it's just a fancy autocomplete. It's a stochastic parrot. I don't think that means what you think it means, respectfully. It's not whether it knows or doesn't know. It's not if it's making it up or not making it up. It's the accuracy that counts. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but if you can accurately make up scenarios about what might happen and invest accordingly, if you're accurate, you can make billions investing, and some people do. But if you separate people into those that think that big changes are coming versus those that think that AIs just are incapable of doing anything of value, either one side or the other side will have a very rude awakening and very soon. But in terms of the test that I've ran on this new OpenAI model, again, using pro, normal thinking, normal being, 20 to 30 to 55 minutes of thinking. Here are some of the outputs that it did. Again, keep in mind, a lot of times, like I said, it would return zipped files. You'd have to unzip it. Then it would have all the project files in it. So this was Conway's game of life, kind of showing a cellular automata, but it was supposed to be on a 3D spherical planet. So notice as generations, it has asteroid impacts. I did ask for asteroid impacts. It did decide to add it in there. Tons of options, including various bloom strength, bloom radius, threshold, exposure, tons of stuff. We have the speed at which it's running. We can change kind of the resolution. Wow, that's kind of nuts. And there's tons of more 3D options to kind of rotate the Earth in various ways. Or I guess this is not Earth, but whatever planet this is. We have meteor intervals, meteor seeds, etc., etc. Tons of controls. We're able to pause and unpause the simulation to look closer to it. You can go a step at a time. Clear, hide HUD, paint, add a life, erase, toggle, camera, wheel, zoom, etc., etc., etc. One shot at this. Here's the prompt. It reasoned for 24 minutes and 1 second. And so notice it gave me the download file. So this wasn't a zip. It was just a single HTML file. Some of the other ones had a whole project that you had to download. And it even proposed some more stuff you can add, like commissions, scoring, etc. There's a few issues I did run into, and I think it just really has to do with Three.js. So I do want to do a full video where we dive into the stuff. I ran into some issues that are very easily fixed if I knew that they were issues, if that makes sense. One of those issues was if you asked for changes, I'd be like, oh, here's like 50 different lines of code to change instead of returning the entire file. That's easily fixed just by making sure that you say, just return the entire file. So for example, if that city destructing game, right? So I wanted more light from buildings and from the sky. I wanted the ship to move a little bit faster. Weapon one was good, but the rest of them, they were a little bit too bright and too close to the screen. They kind of cluttered everything. And as you can see, each prompt takes a while to complete. So if I knew this, I would have also added, just put everything into one file. Otherwise, it goes and does it piecemeal. But this is the game that it created. Again, one shot. This is before those second additions that I did, right? You have a afterburner. You're able to strafe. You can go up and down, look around, fire. There's 4 rockets. There's points and combos and various power-ups. You even have a tip here. Rockets plus barrels equals chain reactions. So here's kind of what that's looking like. So as you can see here, we're in a city moving left and right. Really has this cool effect of it's like shifting the camera. It's got some floaty stuff. So as you can see here, this is what the next thing that I would be working on is adding textures to the buildings, adding some sort of lights. It just needs more lights. But the controls feel good. Shift is the afterburner. Space and control moves you up and down, or C, I guess, moves you down. This does have sound. It's hard to capture the way I'm recording it, but I'll have a clip with the sound in it. And here's if I start shooting, this is kind of what that looks like. So as you can see here, it's actually like bouncing off the building, the whatever this is, a machine gun, minigun. Things are actually bouncing off the building when I'm shooting it and it's blowing up. It's looking good. The entire buildings get demolished. This is what weapon 2 looks like. It shoots this fireball or whatever. This is a nuclear explosion of some sort. Very, very bright. And this is what I mean. This is what I wanted to change is there's not enough light in the game world, and those shots are super bright. So it makes it very, very hard to see. So, but those are little things. I mean, everything is great about this. It's just little tweaks that need to happen. Here's weapon number 3. Again, same thing. It kind of like blocks your vision. But again, this is the next iteration. This will be fixed. And when you're done, it gives you your final score. Here's another one that I asked for that had a visualization space of some of the biggest kind of like cosmic structures you could have, or anything from sci-fi or games, like the biggest mega structures that are inspired by the largest constructs in science fiction and fantasy. Notice I can change the bloom, the glow. I can change the field of view, which is pretty cool. And let's do the autopilot demo. So this was the first generation that it did. This is kind of like the one-shot result. It does have some issues again with the lighting, with kind of like the bloom effects, but you can see these massive structures. I mean, they're there. They're rendered. It's kind of insane that you're able to kind of see them in real time. They're moving in space. A lot of this is very impressive. Again, I think the big issue here is, again, since it's not actually looking at the output, it can't know what it looks like, right? So it's just writing code and then hopes that it looks good. So for a lot of this stuff, you need to go back and tweak how it's supposed to look, the lighting, etc. This is where I kind of ran out of time again, because I needed to make sure that I save, include all in one file, and then each sort of addition takes a while. And we can warp to the Dyson segment, so some portion of the Dyson sphere, and here it is. So that's an actual sun, and this is a portion of the Dyson sphere that's catching this electricity. Again, it's hard to see because of the lighting, but with a few iterations, this is what I want to do a separate video to really showcase this, because a lot of this would be easily fixed. Here it built a orbital elevator. So as you can see here, there's a planet down there, down below. And this is kind of that elevator that's going all the way to the top to that thing. Pretty impressive, I gotta say. Again, just one shot creates entire 3D worlds. That is the tree of life, or rather the world tree, I guess, as it's called. We also have a neon spire city. Pretty impressive. We have a fortress mountain and a void gate, and we're able to travel between these locations using warp, etc. So I don't know how awesome this looks to you. To me, this is very impressive. It just, the lighting is bad, so I do have to tweak it. But the sheer amount of stuff that's able to build, that you're able to fly around and experiment with, like the reflections off the sun and stuff like that, there's a lot here that's very, very impressive. Keep in mind, this thing has only been out for a few hours. Some of these prompts take, almost an hour to complete, and a few back and forths can be, 20, 30 minutes, etc. So the initial results, I mean, I would say are kind of good. They're kind of mind-blowing. Anyways, I think I'll leave it here. In my next video, I'll try to have everything sort of more presentable, because there's a lot to see here. But based on these kind of early results, I mean, what do you think? Is this impressive? It building out these massive structures in a space that you're able to fly around, doing it in one shot, creating something like this fairly easily with tons of options. And again, as we iterate on it, it seems like there's a lot more functionality that we could add. And the fact that we can even give it more juice to think about it more, to create more stuff. I mean, What's your take? Do you think this is a significant step forward? It's hard to compare it to Gemini 3 Pro because I feel like it really progressed kind of in a different direction than Gemini 3 Pro. It's hard to compare the two because this goes deep and spends a lot of time and creates. Gemini 3 Pro is still a little bit more back and forth. It's a little bit faster. It's a little bit more like normal AI chatbots with amazing results, but still a little bit more what we're used to. This feels completely different. This feels like an AI system. You give it a task and you just go away and you let it finish it. And what do you think about the GPT-Eval, right? So do you agree with Ethan Mollick and Noam Brown, and I guess myself as well, that this is a massive and meaningful jump from under 40% win rate to 70 plus? Anyways, let me know in the comments. More coming very, very soon. If you made it this far, thank you so much for staying and watching, and I'll see you in the next one.